What we know about anxiety is it is common in childhood. It can be around social issues, it can be around separating, or just anxiety about things like spiders, or that food that your mother makes you eat, which is ugly. Where it becomes an issue is if it's about limiting, if it limits opportunities for children to participate in things, or to go to a party or to enjoy a playground. If it's unusually high compared with peers, and lots of kids have issues around things, that's okay. Or if it is so severe that actually, they're in such a state, then you need to seek professional help. So I want to talk today about some of the ways that we might help children who are navigating what is pretty usual about life. Why we're interested in this is because it affects our thinking. It affects our avoidance of situations. So we'll choose not to take part in something. We all do it. There are things in our own lives that we don't do because it gets those feelings going. It's like if I said to you, I hope you're all taking notes because there's a quiz at the end and I'm going to randomly get you to stand up. You go, what? Whereas you've got some self-soothing strategies, you'll be thinking, I'm out of here before she gets to point to me. We've all got ways of managing. It can affect our sleep. If you've got a test the day before, or you've got a bill that you're thinking, how can I pay? Your mind is going around and around with this stuff. It can affect our ability to start tasks because we want it to be so perfect that we're not even starting it. It can affect our asking for help, like, I'm the only person who's going through this, therefore I'll just stay quiet instead of asking the question that can get me to a better outcome. It can also mean that we are overly seeking help, that we can be overly needy, or even, like I think of ICT. I've got my dream purchase yesterday, my current dream purchase, a pair of noise cancelling wireless Bluetooth headphones. And then, how the hell do I Bluetooth them? So I go back to the, people in my house who know that stuff, and I go back to them some more and back to them some more until one suggests perhaps I could read the instructions, which I still haven't got my glasses. Because I've got lots of ways to avoid doing that, but quite honestly, I'm going to have to learn better. Then we might have difficulty joining in because we think that'll be tricky, we don't go there. And we can also end up with headaches or stomach aches, which actually, again, limit the quality of our life. And really critically for parents, it's about your resilience, because are you going to bend or break as you manage this? And I love pictures of trees that grow in the most extraordinary places. And I think, that's that grittiness, that absolute, I'm going to get there. And that's what we all need to have when we're managing kids with anxiety. This is not limited to you as parents, though. This is a whole national approach, which we're talking about as everyone should have a mental health literacy, or what we might call an emotional literacy, to understand the emotion we're bringing to a situation and to know what to do with it. And that's self-help seeking behaviours. All of us, when emotions are creating difficulty for us in life, we should know what to do about it. So that's the goal. Because the great, fact of life is that it's the way we think about something that shapes our response to it. Quick example, driving down, when I was at Salisbury North, driving down Port Wakefield Road, occasionally you'd get cut off, and, my response was not kind. I know some swear words and they'd probably come out. And my shoulder would grip and I'd think, how dare you? But when I could change that around to, whoa, they're in a rush, I hope they get there safely, there was no physical response whatsoever. So that's something, to learn, that it is how we think about it, like how dare that person cut me off because I'm more important. When we can just go, whoa, we have a very different physical response. So I want to talk today about some strategies that can be learned. We are not limited all life by how we currently respond to things. So I'm going to talk about them as self-soothing strategies and with the intention of building coping skills. And they take the form of mindfulness movement, the breath as an anchor, distraction and priming. I'm going to talk about partial agreement. I'm going to talk about the role of gratitude. Because what we want is that for our children and for ourselves, that those worries can be released, that they're not held on to us as this tight little canker, or as sometimes we might describe it, it's a heavy rock that we cart around with us because we don't know what else to do with it. So we're going to go through some some of those self-soothing strategies. Like when kids were little, they sucked their thumb or they sucked a dummy, or these days they stare at a screen. You know, in a way, they're a self-soothing thing. Have you noticed at bus stops, you know, don't get me started about screens, but people don't look at each other, they don't talk, they don't have the conversations that build empathy. When they're at a bus stop, it's like, I don't know that person, look at my screen. Whereas I talk to everyone, which my daughter tells me is a little bit creepy, but I meet fascinating people all the time. On buses last week, I met 2 really interesting people. I met a young woman who had a shoebox with holes in it. What's in the shoebox? She said, it's a budgie. And I said, how amazing, what are you going to call it? And she said, what do I feed it? I thought, you've got a budgie. So I said, that was my response. So I said, everybody here on the bus got a budgie, and the conversation began about what you feed budgies. So I just think we've got to be open to it, but we model that for our children too. Because as much as my daughter thinks it's a bit creepy, the way I talk to strange people, she's good at it. I've seen her do it. What mindfulness is about is the ability to acknowledge the emotional response we're having, to accept it, we're not judging it, and then to do something about it. So at the most simple level, that is mindfulness. It's being open, it's being aware, and it's focusing right here, right now, in the moment. And it's what some medical people are talking about as a superpower. And I've got a little clip that I'm going to show you, an animation, which explains why it's considered a superpower.
You may have heard this word mindfulness. It's become something of a buzz phrase of late. So I'm going to give you one simple, serviceable definition, which is this. Mindfulness is the ability to know what's happening in your head at any given moment without getting carried away by it. Imagine how useful this could be. Just as an example, you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off in traffic. How do you normally react? I think most of us, we normally react by having a thought, which is, I'm pissed. And then what happens next? You immediately, habitually, reflexively inhabit that thought. You actually become pissed. There's no buffer between the stimulus and your reaction. With just a little bit of mindfulness, in that same situation, you might notice my chest is buzzing, my ears are turning red, I'm having a starburst of self-righteous thoughts, I'm getting angry. But you don't necessarily have to act on it and chase that person down the road, screaming at them with your kids in the back of the car thinking you've gone nuts. Now, you might be thinking, don't I need to get angry sometimes? Aren't I justified? I would say yes, but probably not as much as you think. The proposition here is not that you should be rendered by mindfulness into some lifeless, non-judgmental blob. The proposition is that you should learn how to respond wisely to things that happen to you, rather than just reacting blindly. And that, my friends, is a superpower. How do you get it? The way to get it is through meditation. I believe that meditation and mindfulness are the next big public health revolution. In the 1940s, if you told somebody you were going running, they would have said, who's chasing you? But then what happened next? The scientists swooped in, they showed that physical exercise is really good for you, and now all of us do it, and if we don't, we feel guilty about it. And that's where I think we're headed with mindfulness and meditation. It's going to join the pantheon of no-brainers like brushing your teeth, eating well, and taking the meds your doctor prescribed for you. Let me just close by saying, mindfulness is not going to solve all of your problems. It's not going to render your life a nonstop parade of unicorns and rainbows. Nonetheless, this is a superpower, and one that is accessible by you immediately.
Okay, so that's what some of the medical people are believing. I know that in the dialysis clinic in Monash that all of the participants there are learning mindfulness. And I think we're in an interesting space because a lot of things get called mindful, you know, it's mindful colouring in, blah, blah, blah. But without that real understanding that it's anchoring yourself and being present, then it's just another, you know, blah, blah thing. And then when it doesn't work, people say, I've tried it, didn't work. Whereas really, did they do what is, you know, the deep learning around mindfulness? And I'm not going to be doing that with you today, but there are lots and lots of opportunities for you to learn that through apps and online. There are courses. I think in WA, there's some amazing people down Port Adelaide But today we're just going to have a couple of experiences of what mindfulness might be. So it's really being present throughout the day, and being present from, I'm really struggle sometimes with when I watch children ramp up their behaviour in order to get the parents' attention, because the parents actually staring at a device. I see it on buses, I see it all over the place, where children do the mum, or dad, but they're busy doing whatever, and it ramps up until they're yelling, and then the parent looks. And what that child has learnt in that moment is the way I get attention is to have it here. And so when we say be present, it's if you're with your child. I'm just on a soapbox about this, and I'm the worst parent ever, so please don't tell me that I'm good about this. But my daughter ended up had depression, and one of the things I did was to put her in a car, and we drove to Alice Springs, we drove to Sydney. My husband and son had passed away, and those conversations where there was no Wi-Fi, there was nothing else but us two, by about day 3 the real conversations began. So that being present is so critical to understand your child, what they need. But I'm just, that's just me about devices. Anyway, the other one, the savouring moments, is when something good happens, actually really going, oh, that's nice, or you eat something that's beautiful, actually reflecting and helping your child to see what is going well. And I call that money in the bank for the bad times, and I'll talk about that a bit more later. But if we're focusing on what's gone wrong in the behaviour, what about all the times when it's been right, and how do we revisit that with ourselves and our children? So I want to just try a little activity called mindful seeing. If we were in a room here, I wasn't sure which room we'd be in, so luckily I prepared one earlier. So this is a window that you're looking out of. Yep. So it is. So I want you now to just look at everything there is to see. Avoid labelling and categorising what you see. Instead of thinking bird or building, try to notice the colours, the patterns or the textures. Notice the different shapes you can see out of the window. See the world from the perspective of someone unfamiliar with these sights. Be observant and not critical. Be aware but not fixated. And if you become distracted, gently pull your mind away from these thoughts and notice a colour or shape again to put you back in the right frame of mind. Because a few minutes can open up a world of discovery. So who was able to just stay focused on something? Because that was a minute. And that's what, when we're starting with children around mindfulness or ourselves, we begin with short bursts. This is actually, I took this last year on the island of Hvar in Croatia, where I climbed to the top of a castle, eventually, and oh God, I was so tired. But once I stayed for 2 hours because I was so fascinated by the view out there and the comings and goings, and and the fact that there was a pool, or this flash hotel took the place of something else, and then I realised I was being judgmental. But it is that, with your child even, having a range of images that they can focus on when they're in that flurry, which I'll talk about in a minute. So mindful seeing is one of the strategies. The way we build the skill in this, because it doesn't just happen, is we do it every day. So giving yourself time to do focused breathing, to actually notice what thoughts you've got when you are in a particular place. And here's a really simple thing you can do with your child. I call it the breathing hand, where if you put your hand up and we say, start here below the thumb and breath in, out. So put your hands up, you're all going to do this. So just breathe in, out, breathe into the top, and you'll get a kind of a nice flow happening. And even with children, so there's 5 big breaths, but they can actually enjoy the feeling. But what you've done in that moment, the mindfulness is the pause. Remember, it's to respond rather than react. So anything that can slow it down, doing this enough. Another one is really just to clap your hands and then feel the tingles. Again, being present, because you don't often think, everyone do it, give a clap. Can you feel the tingle in your hand? Notice when it might stop. So again, just focusing there, you're taking your mind from whatever else might be happening. So it's a really simple little one. There are other things that you can do, progressive muscle relaxation. You can Google these, heaps and heaps on the internet. Visualisation scripts, imagine you're on the island of Havar and you're, I did a WA meditation course and virtually got thrown out because I kept nodding off. But truly, she was so relaxing, and she'd say, but I was so relaxing. Her voice was just perfect. Anybody happened to you where you've gone to sleep? Yeah. And then, so it's a bit of a bummer for the others apparently when I'm snoring. But, even listening to music mindfully, eating mindfully, just in that moment, not trying to do 5 other things. Prayer is a form of mindfulness. Cultivating gratitude. There's laughing yoga. If you haven't tried it, gosh, it's fun. And there's a guy in Adelaide, David Cronin, who offers it free in a few parks and things. It actually began in India with the elderly. And you can see on YouTube, if you Google laughing yoga India, they just laugh. And what they're doing is with the ha-ha, is they're bringing the air in, those big movements. It's all about filling your lungs. And then there's also mindful exercise. So now we're just going to try another quick example of a mindfulness activity. And this one is about what we call the anchoring yourself, the noticing the 3 things, and being present. So just get comfortable in your chair, and if you want to, you can close your eyes. If not, just look down to the ground. Take a few deep breaths. Notice how the breath flows in and out. Plant your feet firmly on the floor. Push them down and notice the floor beneath you. Notice the tension in your leg muscles as you push your feet down. Notice the feeling in your entire body. Notice the feeling of gravity anchoring you to the ground and flowing down through your body. Now think about 3 things that are around you. You can look around at the environment and where you are. Now think about 3 things you can hear around you. And finally, notice 3 things you can feel in contact with your body. Now release the tension in your legs. As you release the tension, make room for what you are thinking and what you are feeling. Allow your thoughts and feelings to move like waves, ebbing and flowing. When a negative thought comes to you, don't try to push it away or hold on to it. Just see it for what it is. Allow your thoughts and emotions to move like waves, ebbing and flowing. Don't try to hold on to them or push them away. Give them space. When you are ready, return to focus on your breathing and then open your eyes. Have one more big breath. So that was 1.5 minutes. But they don't need to be long for you to have a sense of focus. Another form of mindfulness, and it can be, some children really love this, is to actually have a mantra. So, Satya, the truth, or Ram, strength. The one I like is the walking mantra, and I've done this where I'm just walking, quite literally 1 foot, then the other, peace, then understanding. And I just recite it over and over, because focusing on that stops the ruminating in my head, whatever else is churning around. There are meditation apps I have at night, particularly like one who has a beautiful Scottish accent, a bit like Sean Connery, and when he's talking to me, I'm just off to sleep really happily. And there are others that I've tried, I've gone, they're not for me. But having something that when you are in that flurry moment, or when your child's having a meltdown, and you've got to maintain that, that's when your mindfulness might be really useful. But if you find your mind drifting, you just come back to the mantra. Now, I talked before about the flurry, and this is an example that's been used to describe what happens in our brains when we're churning. And so I'm going to talk about this, but in my last few schools, we've actually used the glitter jars. It might have one at home, but basically, it's got water, some glue and bits and pieces. And I use it to talk to children about, this is what's happening when you're in that agitated moment, or, you're late for an appointment, or, the tea's burning in the oven. Not that happens to me because I don't really cook, but apparently it can be quite distressing. My mother ran a restaurant. Why did I need to cook? So what we do with children is we actually just keep breathing until the bulk of the glitter has settled. And this has big things and little things, and we can describe that as naming different emotions. So we might have, there's my anger's the big ones, my hurt is the other ones. But we continue to breathe until this calms. Because what we know is that when our brains are in this state, we don't make good decisions. And if you're someone who travels and has ever been, lost your passport at the airport or something, it's really hard to problem solve. You're actually literally having a meltdown yourself. So the time when we teach kids these skills is not when their brain's in this space. We teach it in the calm times. None of us can learn a skill. It's be like saying, sorry, what's your name? Trish. So Trish is at the Olympics in high jump. Trish says, how do I do high jump? She says, well, let's give it a go. Trish would have learnt before that, and yet we seem to expect in our most heightened times that we're going to magically learn some of these skills. We do them in the calm. Anyway, on Google online, there's lots of ways to do these. So the mindfulness in that instance is the pause. Lost my car keys, panic, okay, taking my breath, let's engage in some problem solving. So what mindfulness does is really just get us to be open, to be able to focus, and during times of adversity, it's you focus on what you can control. Because one of the great learning things of adulthood, isn't it, is that there are some things you really can't control. And so rather than revisiting that and ruminating, we can let them go. So there's the glitter jar. This was at my previous school. You might know them as calm down jars, mind jars, mindfulness jars. But it's not just give them a jar, you teach the skills of the breathing, breath is your anchor, and so on. And for some classes, they would have it after lunch every day for 5 minutes. But they might be a guided meditation as well as just to music, looking at the jar. Another activity is belly breathing, because the deep breath is when your actual diaphragm moves, and in essence your belly comes out. So teaching kids to do that. Now one way is mirror breathing. Sitting opposite your child, holding their hand and actually saying, breathe with me, watch how as my chest moves, yours is going to move. And that can be a very calming thing. It's a connection as well as a modelling of getting the big breaths in, slowing theirs down. Another way is to, if they're lying on the ground, to put a soft toy on their stomach and see if they can make the toy move up and down. So that's the breathing buddy. You might have a special toy you keep with you that when they're getting a bit agitated, can't always just lie down like in the middle of the mall, but don't we feel like it sometimes though? Or they do anyway, yes, true. And then the last one's the Hoberman. Now, I lost my Hoberman and I've tried everywhere. Well, actually, Imagine at Burnside had them, but they were $25. My other ones were $5 at the market. But we use them, and often teachers will stand out the front of the class, and again, breathe in, the ball expands, breathe out, and it collapses. So it's getting them to see that connection between the breath and so on. But you can do it with your hands. When you think about Tai Chi and other movement, it's again that beautiful big movements, getting the oxygen in, which reduces the stress. Because when we're stressed, we shallow breathe. Have you noticed that? And then you get a little bit more dizzy, and again, that impacts on decision making. So it's really about getting the breath in. But if you see a Hoberman at a cheap shop, they can be quite a useful demonstration. Not for the child to hold until they've mastered it, but it's something that you can use in and out. Another, I think, a really powerful tool is actually laughter. Yeah, see, made me laugh. I'm sure it's photoshopped, but... And that is, the neuroscience tells us that laughter is a real cognitive halt. And we know that when we're at a movie and you can be watching something that's quite tense and something funny happens, you relax. So I've found, some research has found that for children sitting a test, if they can actually watch something funny and engage in a good laugh, they'll do better on the test afterwards. So same for you. If you are struggling to do something like, Bluetooth your headphones, there's a whole lot of funny YouTube clips I've got. My favourite's Charlie the Unicorn, for those who know Charlie, going to Candy Mountain. Okay, it's just, yes, you know it, don't you? It's so right, but somehow it just makes me laugh every single time I watch it. And the other one is a clip of bad gym accidents. So, now, no one was injured in the making of them, but they are funny, aren't they? And that's actually a really purposeful tool. So Again, what have you got ready for your child? Have you got a funny picture? Can you point out something funny that they see? Do you do a funny walk yourself? Do you tell a funny joke? Whatever it is to distract them. And the other one is what we call partial agreement. Not quite Vicky Pollard, no, but yeah, but. But when a child says, I'm not eating that, it's yucky, you can go, yeah, I can see that you think it was yucky. I thought it was yucky first time too. But, you know, it's that hearing them but not letting them stay there. Because if you can't challenge a child in that moment, over time, how do they move? So there's always got to be a point of support and challenge. Reminding them of past successes. You know, I've had children tell me, you know, I can't do anything, it always goes wrong for me. And I can say, oh, you know, the other day when you were out on the soccer field and I saw you do a really good kick. I remember that kick. I remember it was, you know, 11 o'clock and the sun was shining. Actually having ways to very calmly respond to, you know, when they say, I can't, you know, everything always goes wrong. And that's where you can share your own experiences. You know, about the first time I tried to Bluetooth a headphone, or, oh, look, I've spent my first years in the Northern Territory in an Aboriginal community, and how tragic in the 80s there wasn't running water or electricity. And, oh, look, I loved it. And I remember in my second year, some old men came up to me and they said, Angela, are you sure you're a white fella? And I thought, oh my God, I'm so in. And they said, because you're the dumbest white fella we've ever met. I wasn't good with machinery and I'd just broken something else. So, you know, I still laugh because I still visit. I go back and visit. And I still remember the minute I drive down that road, I think, oh God, I was such a klutz, wasn't I? But I can laugh about it because they laughed about it even while they were fixing it yet again. So share your own experiences of challenge. Let them know it hasn't been easy for you and teach by example. You know, as adults, we don't like people to see us do things badly. You know, well, actually, YouTube's there for that reason, I suppose, when I think about it. But, you know, letting your kids see your stuff up and talking about it. Yep, stuffed up. So what I'm going to do next time, show them your problem solving, your think aloud. For some reason, they think we can do everything. We can't. Certainly be there for them. And that's your own bend, not break, and encourage that, have a go. And sometimes, you know, my own reflection as a parent is I'm saying, oh, for God's sake, you can do this. Like, you know, what's my own language indicating? Or what's my non-verbals? Kids are so savvy to pick up our non-verbal behaviour. They know whether we're serious or not. You know, you don't really believe me, you're faking it. I've had a kid say that to me, you're faking it, miss, you don't really believe. And I said, actually, I can see I've let you down. Like, I was actually trying to show you I believe in you, but I'm tired and I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. So let's try again. Go back to, this is why I believe you can do it, this is my evidence. And I'm going to be here with you and nothing bad will happen. So it's that sense of we genuinely are there. Another powerful thing around countering this anxiety is actually getting kids to reflect on and notice the positive emotion. When are they happy? When did they feel success? How did it feel to be on that swing? You know, what about when you did manage to, you know, ride that bike the first time, or bounce on the trampoline, or just lie in the sunshine? So for some children, it can be, and this was a teacher's project where the kids just had to write and they were velcroed to a wall and she took photos, but it created this success book. And it was a thing, so in the tough times you could go back to the book, you can look through it, whether it's photos or scrapbooking or drawings, to say, remember this day, remember this day. Because in that moment, all they're seeing is what's wrong, and yet there's a whole trail of wonderful things behind them. But we need to be good at that too, because we can be the same. So I'm grateful for, and there are books there. I've got one was a photo story, a woman for she took one photo every day of the year for a year to say what she was grateful for. It's a beautiful book, and I've had classes do that, and parents have joined in submitting their own versions. And when it comes to bedtime, you know, everyone should be reading with their child up to the age of 25. Okay, I'm just saying that because, you know, fiction builds empathy, and I've noticed a lot of young people only reading about Kardashians. I suppose that is fiction though. Anyway, that's just so. But what about if you swap a story for a guided meditation, where you do the what's out the window, how, you know, can you feel your feet, you know, moving up, releasing the tension. And the Smiling Mind app is Australian. Has anybody got this one at the moment? Yep. And it's Australian, it's free, and I like that it's Australian because it's our voices. Like, as much as I like the Scottish guy, I like to think that there's some Australian as well. There's a whole lot out there, and even in your own network, share what works for you. A lot of teachers will use these guided meditations because they're really only about 5 minutes and you can work up. But if you're going to start this with your child, you know, it can be as simple as the clap, feeling the tingling, that really short, sharp stuff, or just staring at a photo or out the window. Cloud watching's another fabulous one, lying on your back on a sunny day in the clouds, and you see what they can see and what you can see. Even walking, you know, what's the biggest leaf you can see? What's the smallest thing you can see? Because in that moment, we're just trying to focus the attention away from that. And even if they're walking into a situation where they're feeling stressed, they're the conversations you have. Look at this beautiful day, how wonderful it's going to be. You know, I hate it. Yes, but look at the trees love it because they're here. You know, I can't tell you some of the things children have challenged me with over the years, but it's keeping that prattle up and do it. You know, my brother is the best fake tripper. He can trip, and every time his boys would be, you know, I want this or that, he'd just do a fake fall, and they'd all be staring at him, and he'd be like, oh, I think I'm okay, I don't think I need the hospital, and they'd be, oh, Dad, you're such a dickhead. But you know what? They'd forgotten to ask for what they were asking for. So it was. He turned 50 recently, and I said, you can't keep doing that because at one point it starts to hurt. So I'm going to leave it at that, but I guess it's saying, what are you going to do? If you want mindfulness to be something that can support you or your child, what might you do tomorrow? And because really critical is actually engaging in some practice. So I'm going to leave it at that. Just if you haven't got a glitter jar, you might have these. Can you hear that? Hang on. This is great because for children who want to hear, I can say, tell me when it stops and I'll speak to you. Because, you know, I don't want to talk to you, I hate you. Yeah, I can see that, but when it stops, I'm going to have a go at talking to you, and if you're not ready, we'll wait a bit longer. And eventually they go, how do the bubbles get in there? Oh, this is stupid. And then I say, oh, no, you're talking to me. Excellent. So annoying to children. Anyway, thank you. All the very best, and wish you success.